So when John covered test-driven development this morning, we covered it in Python, and we utilize Python's built-in unit test package or module. So there's a unit test library that's built into Python. All we have to do is import it. JavaScript doesn't have any built-in libraries or testing libraries. So we actually have to import a testing library in order to perform unit tests in JavaScript. So again, this is in today's lesson with Python, but in JavaScript, it's a little more nuanced and you have to kind of go research stuff by yourself. But I kind of want to show you how to go about doing that. So in our assignments today, we want you to solve today's challenges in JavaScript and in Python. For the Python challenges, we want you to use test-driven development in the testing framework we taught you today. Instead of just using the basic driver code that's already there, we actually want you to write unit tests. For JavaScript, we want you to use Jest. Jest is a unit test, a testing library for JavaScript. There are multiple different testing libraries in JavaScript. There's Jest, there's Enzyme, there's Jasmine. There's a bunch of them. So there's just a bunch of different testing libraries that other developers wrote to test your JavaScript code. Jest is a really popular one. It translates to React later. Enzyme is another testing library specific to React, but Jest is pretty straightforward and kind of relatively easy to get started. So, if we want to see how to utilize Jest, we have a link that takes you directly to Jest's website, and it kind of gives you a nice, easy way explanation of how to go ahead and get started. But let's actually walk through that and kind of show you Jest. So, for example, I'm going to just make a directory called tdd, cd into tdd, and I'm just going to read through the instructions. So it says, getting started, install Jest using yarn. We can do this, like yarn add --dev Jest, or we can use npm. Where have we seen npm before?
Prompt.
And prompt. So exactly. So prompt was a package that we used for Def Grandma. Jest is just another package, but it's a lot more robust, or it's a lot more I don't want to say complicated, but yeah, there's a lot more capabilities that this package has. So we can install Jest by doing npm install Jest, but I just kind of want to read through this documentation first. So it uses yarn, but npm will also work. So I'm just going to literally go through this and see what this does. So I'm going to do npm install --save -dev. That just means save it as a dev dependency instead of like just a normal package. So it's only utilized for developers. So if I clear, I zoom in a little bit. All right. And I'm in TDD. Now, if I could do npm, I can literally just copy and paste that. npm install --save -dev Jest. And it's going to install. You're going to see that node modules thing folder pop up, and you're going to see some other stuff.
Quick question. Is this going to be available to our global environment or only within the directory of?
I think it should be only for your current directory.
Okay.
You can install it globally, but I generally just don't. So here we have our node modules and our package lock JSON. Now let's go back to the documentation. It says first we can create a sum.js file. Now, so I can create clear. So touch sum.js. There's my sum.js file. And we can write a function called sum, or we can even say like multiply A times B, And in previous challenges in the JavaScript portion, like in factorial, I'm just going to split that here. We have this exports.factorial. This is one way we can write the function, or we can literally just write the function and do module.exports multiply. It does the same thing, so you can even change this to const. I'm just going to create this an arrow function, and then module.exports equals factorial. Same thing. I like this way better. I like the syntax better, just because kind of keeps everything kind of separate. We just export everything at the very end of the file. So now it says, so we created a file called sum.js, which I guess it should say multiply.js. Let's actually rename that multiply.js. There we go. And we can actually just test this file by doing multiply and just say like 2, 3, and we can ls node multiply JS. Oh, let's just console log it. So we see it printed out on the screen, clearing it down here in the terminal. And there we go. We have 6. Now, I'm not doing test-driven development now. I'm just kind of showing you how the Jest testing library works. So then it says, then create a file named sum.test.js. So I'm going to create a file called touch. I'm going to say multiply.test.js. And if I code multiply, there we go. I'm going to split the screen here. So I have my function over on the left-hand side, and I've got what I'm going to be writing, where I'm going to be writing actually my test specs. So in here, here's kind of what it tells us to do. I'm just going to comment that out. So this module that exports, we're exporting the multiply function in the multiply.js file to grant other files access to the multiply function. In order to import this multiply function in other files, such as this test.js file, I can const multiply. I can call this whatever I want, but you generally want to keep it the same as the function name. And you want to require, and you want to find that path of where this multiply.js is located at. So I can do multiply. So I'm importing from the multiply folder. You can kind of see here from the multiply.js file, and I'm importing the multiply function. Now I'm coming down here. Now I need to write a test spec for that. So you can kind of see the syntax. It says there's a built-in function in the Jest library called test. And it takes in a string it takes in 2 arguments, a string and another function. And the string just is a description of what this test actually does. So like multiplies 3 times 2, or 2 times 3 to equal, what is it, 6? And then it's going to take in a function as a second argument. There we go. Right there. So when it runs this test, it's going to execute this function. And there's other built-in methods like expect, multiply, 2 and 3. Where is it? So expect, multiply, to be. So I got this thing called to be and the actual value of that. So if we look here in the documentation, using matchers, test, you can see all these different functions. To be null, you can test things if they're going to be to be null, to be defined, to be truthy, to be falsy. So expect to be null, to be defined. You can do not to be null, not. So you can test if things are not null, not defined, etc. You can test numbers, expect the value to be greater than a number, to be greater than or equal to. So it's got a lot of built-in methods. So if I go back to here, so there's my first test spec that I'm writing for this multiply function. But now let's go back to the documentation. It says add the following section to your package.json file. It's like, okay, so I'm looking over here. I've installed Node, or I installed Jest. I've got my multiply. I've got my multiply.test spec file. I've got this package lock.json, but I don't have a package.json file. So what is, since I'm a developer, I have to figure out how to do things on my own. What is a package.json file in JavaScript? So a package.json file that exists at the root level of your Node project. So at the root level of my Node project, so this is at that TDD. All right, so I'm just gonna click on that. npm package. So I'm scrolling down. I don't know kind of what I'm looking for right now. All right, this is all kind of foreign to me right now. Yeah, I don't know what any of this means. I'm just gonna go back, look. So Node.js. All right. So this is kind of what it might look like. 2 fields, name and version. But then there's all these other descriptions or other keywords. Like I don't know what I need. So like I'm just gonna Google how to create a package JSON file. So creating a package.json file. All right, so I'm scrolling down. Say, just looking. So it's running CLI questionnaire. To create a package.json file, the values that you supply, use npm init command. Okay, so run the following command. All right, so I'm just gonna run this npm init in the terminal and just kind of see what happens. Because a lot of stuff is just kind of like, oh, let's just kind of see what happens. We can always go back if things don't work. So npm init, it says this utility will walk you through creating a package.json file. It only covers the most common items and tries to guess sensible defaults. Cool. So my package name, so I'm creating a new node package, is TDD, which is the same as this folder directory name. So, okay, that's fine. So whatever's in parentheses, that's the default. If I wanted to name it something else, I can name it something else, but I'm just gonna keep it as TDD for right now. So I can press enter. I see version, the default is 1.0. Just gonna click OK. Description, you can even leave that blank. Entry point, the default is multiply.js, that's okay. Test command, I don't know what that means. Git repository, we don't have one yet. Keywords, don't know what that means. Author, I can say like Tom Preet, but you don't necessarily need one. License, I don't know. And then it shows you kind of a skeleton of what the package.json file will look like. And okay, look, it already has the dependency in here, Jest. That's nice because I already npm installed Jest, so it already knows, hey, Jest is a dependency. So it says, is this okay? The default is yes, so I can just press enter. And there's my package.json file. Does anybody have any questions, or what questions do you have about creating a package.json file? It's literally just running npm init. You can even do npm init space -y, and it automatically creates the package JSON file with all the defaults. So you don't necessarily have to go through all that questionnaire.
I got a quick question about npm.
Yep.
When you npm install, does it just download a bunch of, let's say, header files or whatever and put them in your project, or does this install the program on your computer?
So it downloads all the packages and all the code to run that library. So that's what the node modules is. So
Okay, so for each project, I would have to run npm install.
Oh, the
to get
actual
those node.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
So the actual physical command of npm install.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you clone something down that has a package.json file that has libraries in that, in order for your code to that project to run, you have to do npm install to install everything in the dependencies. So these are all packages. Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Tom, it said, yeah, right there. It says on the documentation. Yeah, it says,
This one?
Yep. Let's see. On the command line, you will navigate to the root directory of your package. So the root directory of our package, what's the best way to think about that? TDD?
Yeah, so it's the folder that your current project should reside. So you should never have an npm package within another npm package. So it's always at like the root level of your project, or not the root level. I guess, yeah, the root level of your project. So TDD is my project and is the package I'm creating, the npm init. So my package.json file should live right here at npm init. It should not live at the same level like as all these other folders.
Because when you're using those modules from other libraries, it can only read peripherally inside that project. It can't, it wouldn't be able to read unless we specify otherwise. Packages and other projects are saved otherwise on our computer.
Right. Yeah. So it couldn't, like if it was stored here, it couldn't read in any other package or any other project. That kind of help answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you
Cool.
so much.
Yep, no problem. So now let's go back to getting started with Jest. So we created our function, we created our test file, and now it says add the following section to your package.json file. Cool. We created our package.json file. So under scripts, there's a script. Literally, a script is something that you can type in your command line or in the terminal, and it should run something. So under scripts, in the test keyword, we're going to add Jest there. So I'm going to come over here. There's my package.json file. In here, it says scripts. There's test. Test has this other thing to run, but we want to change that to Jest. And save that. We don't have to change anything else. We just have to save it. And now, if we actually run npm run test, which is literally saying npm run this script test, it's going to execute Jest, and it's going to look, hey, are there any file extensions with test.js? And if so, run them. So if I clear here, I'm in TDD, and I do npm run test. See if this works. It says run multiply test. Great. I don't know what this is. Watchman crawl failed. That's fine. So Watchman isn't running in the background. That's okay. It says pass multiply JS multiplies 2 times 3 to equal 6. Yes. Test suites 1 pass. Tests 1 pass. There we go. I can even duplicate this. Multiply, 6 times 3 to equal 18. Oh, 18. So multiply 6 times 3 to be 18. Now if I clear this and run this again, it says ran these 2 tests right here. Can even do some different matchers. I can say, where's it type to be. So if I wanted to, so I can say like multiply returns a number, I can say like type of to be, I think it's number. Maybe this will work. Yep, so multiply returns a number right here. So there I just ran 3 different test specs for this multiply function. So what questions do you have about testing in JavaScript?
Hey, Tom, how many tests do you think, I mean, I guess it's different for every function, but how many tests do you think like reasonably you should write for like one of the problems that we're going to be solving?
It depends on how complicated the function is, but I would say probably between 3 and 7. I don't know, as long as you cover all the different edge cases as well. Not all edge cases, because you can't test for absolutely everything in a function, and you shouldn't try to. You should just try to test for the main things. So like 3 to 5 test cases is fine.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. All right.
So when we submit these challenges, we'll submit a .test.js file with it, right? To like include edge cases just to show that we're being diligent.
Yeah, like you can just submit, you can literally just convert, where is it? Like for like factorial. So right here, factorial is like has a spec file. There is a way to change Jest to, because Jest literally will look for .test.js, those types of files. But where up here it says factorial spec.js. So Jest won't check in this, by default, won't check for the spec.js file. There are ways to change the file types that Jest looks in. You can definitely do that, and I encourage you to kind of look at in that documentation to try to change, or you can literally just change this to like .test. Whoops, if you want to, that's totally fine as well. But I would at least encourage you to change the driver code, these console logs, to actual test specs, and maybe add a couple more. So, but yeah, you will be adding that test file to GitHub when you're making a pull request.
Could you go back to multiply.test.js? I just have one more question. Let me just look at it a second so I don't ask a dumb question.
Oh, what is this?
Yeah. So why are we not passing anything inside our parameters there? Yeah, in the purple.
In here, because this is just a callback function. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just this function will automatically execute. So it doesn't need any parameters the way Jest has set up or created.
Is that the same thing as an asynchronous function?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll find out and I'll let you know.
Hey, Tom, so the npm install save dev Jest, we have to do that per directory on a per challenge basis?
Yeah, unless you can install it globally if you want to. But yeah, I generally just install it on a per project basis, per challenge basis.
Okay.
What would be the pros and cons